usually start my lessons with a Bible scripture, but I thought it was a very good place to start my lesson today. In John 13:34, it says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." My talk title is Love Everybody. So the great master teacher, Jesus, the original hippie, by the way, boiled it all down to love one another. You know, he taught for years, and this is what his big message was: love one another, period, hard stop, love one another. Regardless of what you may hear on the airwaves around you about the Christian message, Jesus taught love. Jesus taught love. So I went in search for some wisdom from Ernest Holmes. And there were so many references to the word love in the concordance to the Science of Mind textbook that I almost kind of got lost in it. And there's so many. But Ernest Holmes writes very clearly as well. He writes this: one of the first things to do is love everybody. If you have not done this, begin to do so at once. Love is the grandest healing and drawing power on earth. It is the very reason for our being. Ernest Holmes. Love one another. Love everybody. Those are pretty big asks, right? Right? I was listening to a podcast the other day. Susan and I were talking about podcasts, and the one I was listening to had a very interesting question asked. And the question that was asked is, do you believe there are good people and bad people? What a timely question for us to ponder, right? And the person being interviewed answered that universal question in a way that I found inspiring, and it really rang true for me. They said, no, there aren't good people and bad people. There are people who are trying and people who are not trying. Then they went on to talk about the presence of pain makes trying very difficult. Human pain of any kind can make trying extremely hard. Does that sound true to you, right? Think about the last time you experienced some physical pain. You know, maybe stub your toe or broke something or whatever. In those moments, it's really hard to care for anyone else other than yourself. Am I right? You know, I was talking to Remy this morning about his wasp stinging experience a few weeks ago, and as he was describing it, I could just imagine that it was impossible for him to keep his little loving nature front and center during that time. I bet he rose above it. I would imagine. I wasn't there, but I wouldn't be surprised, right? Because when I think back to a time when I was in a lot of pain, have you ever had a kidney stone? Raise your hand if you've had a kidney stone. Claim the victory. You know, they say that pain is kind of equal to childbirth, and since I've done both, I'll say, yeah, that sounds about right. So I can remember being in kidney stone pain and going to the hospital ER, you know, to find out when I was going to die, and it couldn't be soon enough, actually. But as I was waiting to be seen, I remember that I could care less about anybody else in the ER. I needed my pain to be addressed, and I didn't care if someone else's arm was hanging off or something. I didn't care. You know, I withdrew into myself, and I paced along the wall, just waiting to be seen. And if someone had come up to me, I might have literally bitten them. I wasn't my most congenial self with the doctors and nurses, I'm sure. Pain got in my way of my ability to try to be good. Right? And we know that human pain comes in a million different packages, actually. Emotional pain can also render a person unable to try as they interact with the world around them. Most people find it difficult, if not impossible, to be kind when they are in acute emotional pain. You know, when we know that someone has just experienced a major loss of some kind, we know to give them a little space, you know, to process before we expect them to be their normal selves again. We understand if they're a little snippy or a little short-tempered or ignore our outreach or even ghost us altogether. We understand if they're rude or uncaring. They've just gone through something acutely painful. It's easy to spot someone in acute emotional pain because their emotions are usually showing. And that visible pain kind of warns us to back up a little bit, or perhaps just sit close by and give them some time to process what they are feeling. But the tricky part is when someone's not in acute emotional pain, but instead carrying around chronic emotional pain. They've been in pain for so long, they're no longer visibly upset or crying or anything. They just have sort of, like gone numb. And the only clue that we get that they are unable to try is because they're unable to be kind and empathetic and compassionate. And the energy that she's showing up through the person in chronic emotional distress is pain. And one of the chronic underlying pains happening in our society right now is the idea that people are being asked by many leaders to categorize others as absolutely unworthy of love. If you're in this group over here, then the group over here is unlovable, and vice versa. And that's painful for all of us on an emotional level. And our pain is showing up in very big ways, isn't it? It's spilling out into violence and acceptance of violence. And these past few weeks have shown us that we kind of understand when someone's chronic emotional pain boils over and they hurt someone else who is championing the idea that they are unworthy of love or even consideration. Everyone is fighting for their group to still be considered worthy of love. Wow. So what do we do? What do we do? We are spiritually grounded people trying to get even more grounded in our highest self, and the world needs every single one of us to love everybody. Therefore, as we interact with others, no matter who they are, we can be aware that either kindness is the energy showing up through that person, or pain is the energy showing up through the person. Going back to our earlier question about whether there are good people and bad people, we can better understand that answer about trying and not trying. People in pain show up as not trying, and sometimes all of us can show up as not trying. Am I right? Right? If we are living a life based in spiritual truth, following the wisdom of Master Teacher Jesus, or even Ernest Holmes, or even nearly every other spiritual teacher of our age, we understand that our job is to meet kindness with kindness of our own, but also to meet pain with kindness. And sometimes kindness can only show up through us as a bit of compassion and a whole lot of boundaries. But we've got to do whatever it takes to love everybody. Marianne Williamson, the great spiritual teacher Marianne Williamson, says this: everything we do is love or a cry for love. Everything we do in life is either love or a cry, please love me. My talk title, Love Everybody, is about that, because if we are allowing Spirit to express through us, this is the purpose of our lives. And if that is true, and I believe it is, every single person shows up in your life on purpose, like we talked about in Sacred Cup this morning. Every person shows up on purpose for you to love them. But it's helpful to recognize that people show up in our lives in very different ways. And our role of being that loving presence may look different from one person to the next. And I tend to think that people show up to us in 4 distinct ways. I think there are others, but these are the ones that kind of stand out for me. I think people, 1, show up to help us and support us. That's one category. I think people show up in our lives to need us. That's another category. People show up in our lives to teach us. Another category. And 4th, people show up in our lives to test us. And that's another category. And as we go through these categories, as I'm going to go through my lesson, I want you to think about some of the individuals in your own life that have shown up or are showing up in these 4 categories. So let's take the first one. Some people show up in your life to help you and support you. Man, aren't they great? Aren't they great? They seem like almost like angels sometimes, and we find these people pretty easy to love most of the time. So think about the people that show up in your life to help you and support you. Hopefully you are in some long-term relationships going on with people that are there for that capacity. But sometimes these people show up in shorter moments, shorter roles, even momentary, brief moments. They cross our path. And when people show up in this capacity, our love is best expressed by being open and receptive to the generosity they are offering. Love comes through as gratitude, and we often pull these people closer, don't we? Like, come here into my hula hoop and just live here for a while, right? They show up as a source of love, and we get to be nurtured by them. And if receiving comes easily to you, you can really enjoy these types of people, but opening up to blessings of generosity and support can also be challenging to many of us. I know some of you, right? No, I don't know. I don't need anything, right? So in this case, love can also look like willingness to receive. And I'm not going to spend a lot of my talk on these kinds of people because we don't really need a new perspective on these kinds of people. We just need to pull them closer and accept what they have to offer. But let's look at that second kind of people that show up. So another kind of person that shows up in your life is here to need you. How many of you are thrilled when someone shows up because they need you? You know, they're drawn to you because they're attracted to something that you seem to offer. You know, resources, stability, support, encouragement, inspiration, light, laughter, friendship, connection, something you seem to offer, they're drawn to. And we can really feel it when people need us, can't we? You know, maybe you're like me and you can feel your energy is being pulled by someone from who's close to you that needs you. I used to say when I walked into my corporate world, I could almost feel people like plugging into me, like plugging into my energy source. And depending on the role you play in life, you may be used to this and it's your way of serving. But if not, this needing can be challenging. Sometimes it's hard to remain open to people who obviously need something from us, isn't it? It's especially hard when we feel like we're depleted in some way or we are feeling manipulated to give things beyond our own comfort level. Please tell me it's not just me, all right? Okay, so I've heard folks say things like, I don't like needy people, or I'm afraid they will get needy, right? So in order for us to be as loving as we can be, we got to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves and love ourselves the most. And when we're connected to Spirit as our source, we know we can never be depleted. We know we can't be depleted. The energy others are seeking is running through us. It's divine and it's limitless. And the way we show up with these kind of people as love is to keep ourselves connected to Source and exhibit generosity to the extent that we continue to feel whole within ourselves, but we love them graciously. And right now, it may feel difficult to discern what is appropriate to give to those who need us. But at a minimum, we've got to run love energy with those who need us and lean on us or look to us for whatever it is that we offer. Notice whenever you start to feel prickly, and try taking a step back and see if you can be more loving from a slightly greater distance. Whatever it takes to love is what is our calling to do. What about the third way people show up? The third way is people show up to teach us, to teach you. And again, these folks can cross our paths just briefly with one conversation or one interaction filled with things we seem to need at that moment, things we need to learn. But these momentary interactions can be wildly varied, right? You never know when they're going to show up. Someone showing up to teach us can show up in a positive, kind of instructive way, offering like a piece of advice or a piece of wisdom or whatever. But they can also appear as someone extremely difficult, giving us a mirror to look at as we learn more about how we wish to be or wish not to be in life. But when in doubt, assume people are here to teach you, because that's often true. So think about how you want to show up in a classroom. When you've paid an instructor to give you valuable information, and if you can think about how you would show up in that situation, you get a glimpse into how best to love those who show up to teach us. Our love here looks like willingness to pay attention, openness to discern what you can learn from that person, curiosity to keep diving into the lesson at hand and seeking to understand. Even in the most difficult classrooms we've been in, we learn best when we remain open and self-compassionate when learning is challenging, right? And when things seem to be beyond our grasp at the moment, we have to just sit in that willingness to be taught. And I don't know about you, but some of the current lessons about life I'm learning right now are being taught by teachers I find very hard to attend to. I just want to shut it off and block them out. But on a wiser level, I know the lessons I'm learning in this moment are really, really important. Actually, I think I might be like in a master's level course in acceptance and diversity and patience and compassion. I'm in a doctorate level class in tolerance and wisdom. Like, I'm learning some stuff. And you're probably being taught by some of the same teachers, and I know that ultimately, they are teaching me love. But holy smokes, right? I prefer people to show up to teach me in a positive, encouraging way, and I want to pull those people closer and learn more. It's easy to love those teachers, but we got to remember that people who show up to teach us through very challenging ways, the ways that feel like too much, call for us to create boundaries and keep loving them even when we want to push them away or reject them. And many of our biggest lessons are about knowing that we've got to love ourselves the most and protect ourselves and our ability to love through developing our skill at setting and enforcing healthy boundaries. Loving everybody means to love all who come to teach us. Take a deep breath. That's a lot. Another way people can show up for you to love them is those that come to test you. So every single one of us has experience with loving people who test us and sometimes hurt us. And it is through these relationships that we tend to learn some of the biggest things life has to teach. It's natural human nature to react to hurtful actions with feelings of rejection and resistance. And when we feel those things, again, boundaries are what we're learning to build. We can also build skills of tolerance and understanding. That hurt people, yes, and that gives us rise for feelings of compassion. So true spiritual love shines through when we can move from tolerance and understanding to compassion and eventually forgiveness. And in the space of forgiveness, we can determine clearly the right position this person can hold in our life, as we can still feel loving toward them, sometimes from a distance. And as we move all the way through to forgiveness, we gain strength to love others even more. Actually, maybe everyone is here to test our love, to help us see where love is missing and where it lives freely. See, I believe that we're here to learn to love everyone our soul draws to us in this lifetime. Remember my mantra, love who shows up. Love who shows up. Each person gives us that opportunity to practice deepening our love for the people who show up, and they fall into one of the categories that I named. We learned to show up as unconditional love to whichever category appears. So one theory I have is that as we practice learning to love those who show up in difficult ways, we learn to draw to us better and better versions in each of these categories I talked about. Let's start with those who show up to love and support us. When we accept those who show up to give to us and support us and to help us, and we don't reject them for showing up like that due to our own unworthiness, throughout our life experiences, we learn to draw to ourselves beautiful people who are incredibly generous with us, giving and supporting our lives. We open our channels of receptiveness through practice, and then we can flow greater love out from us as it flows to us from these people. And what about people who need us? As we learn over life to accept some people that will need us and not reject them for needing us, we grow in our capacity to show generosity, and we draw to us people who need us and receive from us more sweetly and beautifully. And these experiences teach us that when we learn what we really have to offer to them is coming from spirit, and we can lean into serving people in ways in the world that we meet others where they are, we figure out where our soul best serves the world around us. And teachers. Sometimes teachers, early teachers, show up in some pretty harsh ways, especially if we had a hard childhood. We have to look back at that. But as we grow and we learn more, we can look back and consider our life trajectory and accept all the teachers that have shown up for us. And when we do that, and when we feel grateful for the lessons and those who brought them, we magnetize to us better and better teachers. Teachers can begin to be inspiring, modeling for us new ways to accept and love others. The teachers get better. Can you see how you may have found some better teachers as your life has gone on? Lessons are learned more quickly when the teachers are better, and then teachers tend to move on. So once we've learned something, that teacher can go. And when we learn to love those better and better who show up and test us, we can learn to look at their behavior as a cry for love, which can draw to us less painful tests and move through them more easily. A testing situation will show up, and we get better at not resisting it. And remember that love is always the answer. Love of self and love of everybody else. The bottom line is everyone is showing up to receive some kind of love from you, and it's your job to pay attention to who shows up, kind of assess what they're showing up for, ask for love, be love, and then perfect that with each encounter you have. Here's the deal. If a person gets your attention, whether it's someone in an interpersonal reaction with you, someone showing up in a public space and behaving in any old way, they've crossed your radar to receive your love. Whether that's the teller at the bank or the customer service representative on the phone or your next door neighbor or the person waving a flag or marching for a cause. However they show up, they are here for our love and our light. And when we live like that, we are sending out a current of love energy and inviting back that wave of love energy to us. And the more we do that, the deeper our love and appreciation and all the symbols thereof become more abundant. That's what we're here to master. So next week, I'm going to lean into a different lesson. Whatever's written down about next week, it's not going to be what it's about. I'm going to do something different. I want to give us a tool to help us learn to love with more mastery. I'm going to talk about the languages of love next week, because we are here to master the spiritual art of flowing out from ourselves into the world of human beings that are within our own hula hoop. So love one another. That's what Jesus said. Love everybody. That's what Holmes says. And our prayer today will be from my favorite song from Gary Lynn Floyd, Love Cover Me.
Love, 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 love. Sing that with me. Love, love.